Episode 203, First Principles Continued, Weeds. This is the World Organic News for the week ending 17th of February 2020. John Moore reporting. Decarbonise the air, recarbonise the soil. After last week's rant, I'm in a happier frame of mind and I hope you are too. So this week I'm continuing the Back to First Principles series, this week, weeds. Talking to non-gardeners who want to be gardeners, there are two issues that stop them starting. The thought of all the work, digging mostly, and secondly, the fear of being overrun with weeds. No dig, I think we've covered sufficiently for now, but if you're new to the podcast, have a listen to episode 198, where I cover it in some detail. So to this week's topic, weeds. Knowing where weeds come from means we can set up the conditions where they will not take root. To know this, we need to look at weeds a little differently from the combative model. The, in inverted commas, traditional approach is to see weeds as the enemy, something which needs to be attacked at every opportunity, deny them life, destroy them. And to be fair, there are times when this approach is necessary, but it is not an ideal starting point. For more on this, episode 127 of the podcast would be a useful listen. To understand weeds, we need to understand the growth habit of the plants, their place in the ecosystem of the garden, and what it is they're trying to do to assist the ultimate aim of nature, no bare soil. So where do they come from? If we look at the ecology of how weeds work, we will get a better idea. If we think back to the end of the last ice age, the glaciers retreated, bare soil was exposed to the light of day. Natural systems do not function well with bare soils. I think that's a point we've made continually in this podcast for the last 4 years. Erosion and so on are the consequences. Weed seeds are all about us. They lie within the soil, waiting to express their weedness in an environmental niche. With the loss of the glaciers and the creation of bare soil, there's a niche there for weeds, in inverted commas, to express themselves. So they come to protect the soil in the most efficient manner possible. It's not that natural systems make decisions in the sense that we do, as in most efficient. But after 4 billion odd years of life on this planet, sufficient evolution has occurred so that there is a seed for every occasion, or every niche in other words. We are attempting to create niches ideally suited to the needs of our vegetable seeds. So if we dig, turn the soil, rotivate or plough, we are creating the conditions ideal for the weeds, as well as perhaps our seeds, although that would be arguable, I would suggest. The bare ground of the deglaciated soils from 10 to 12,000 years ago is what we're really reproducing when we dig and turn the soil, hence the need for no dig. I've covered how to set up a no-dig garden in episode 198, as I mentioned above. By placing material over the soil, layering in fact, we are not creating the bare soil conditions where natural systems will attempt to fix the problem we didn't even know we were creating. So it's all about setting the right conditions. The actions of weeds, when seen from the soil's point of view, are to cover it, protecting the biology underneath. And the great advantage of the no-dig method is against these annual weeds. They come to cover the soil, but if we cover the soil, they have nowhere to grow. Now, on a deeper level, perennial weeds would suggest a bigger problem. Things like thistles are annuals and can be dealt with either by setting the conditions where they will not grow or dealing with them through their life cycle. And thistles are a good example of these annual weeds. So if they're a problem, or anything has a similar growth habit is a problem, they will respond to slashing at the right time. So cutting a thistle before it has reached the flowering stage will only result in the plant still flowering, but at the level it was cut, usually at ground level. The secret to thistles is to wait until you see the first flush of purple on a thistle flower within the patch. This points to the plant, and all the plants in the group, moving from the growing to seed production cycle of their lives. This is the critical time, and it is now that a scorched earth policy is needed. Slash, cut, stamp upon each and every plant. What happens is this. The plant will not return to the growth phase and grow new seed heads. It is beyond that for the season. The seed heads produced at this point will have immature seeds that are not viable, and the slash material will form a mulch layer over the ground they were growing on, that is, covering the ground. Now, perennial weeds work in similar ways, things like ragwort, blackberry and lantana, but they need a different approach, and again, based upon an understanding of the ecology of the plant. Perennial plants generally have a store of energy in their roots. This gets them through periods of grazing, damage and drought. They also hold the soil in place and cover it up so that it won't get washed away and the biology is protected. Now you can either outcompete them, that is by growing more quickly than they do, and with blackberry I've seen people successfully use chocos to outgrow them and then graze them with cattle. For those that don't know what chocos are, there's a link in the show notes. And the cattle love to graze chocos, and as they do so they trample the blackberries. Follow-up with slashing is still required because the blackberries will grow back. Now I've used goats and damara sheep to do the same thing by directly eating the blackberries, which is my preferred method for all perennials. And then you have to slash and slash again. Eventually the underground root stores are depleted. Now you can do this by grazing with the goats or the damaras, or you can just keep slashing. Eventually the plant dies and the ground is covered with a mulch. So that gives you some idea of how to deal with the ecology of both annuals and perennials. Now even with a no-dig garden, weeds will still always arrive. They come off your boots from birds and on the wind. Sometimes they wash in if you're in a flood-prone area. Now with a no-dig approach, their number will be much smaller, which means you can uproot them as you see them and leave them on the surface to rot down and become part of the bed. So the key really is to have the right mindset. Understanding where weeds come from, why they arrive and what they are doing, means we have a deeper understanding of what may in fact be a problem with our soil and our local garden ecology. And with this understanding, weeds cease to be a problem. They become clues to our soil health, what we need to improve in our systems, and as a resource to respond to and improve the current conditions. The problem, in fact, becomes the solution. Weeds will come. Our understanding determines whether they will be a problem or just another piece of information helping us to make good decisions. Now, if you've made it this far into the podcast episode, I'm assuming you have an interest in what I've been talking about, both today and for all of the First Principle shows. So if you're ready to put these things into practice, pop over to worldorganicnews.com, drop your email and first name into the form on the front page, and I'll send you a copy of my no-dig gardening book for Nix. The techniques and examples there will help you feed yourself, your family and your loved ones, and also to decarbonise the air and recarbonise the soil, which is the whole point after all. Thank you all for listening, and I'll be back next week.